I'm Janeane. This is KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine, and this is Get the Funk Out. I hope my next guest knew the name of my show, by the way. Standing by to join me is Michelle Carlson. She's Executive Director of the Teen Line. As I mentioned to Michelle, last week, I saw an article about the Teen Line in the OC Register, and I'm really happy we could make this conversation happen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Janeane.
How did you get involved in starting the Teen Line?
I've been involved with the mental health sector for nearly 20 years now, and been really focused on suicide prevention and the role that stigma plays in keeping people from seeking help. But I really think it was my own personal losses. So I've lost 4 loved ones to suicide. And including my father, who was a mental health professional. And it just really magnified just how deep that stigma runs, even among the mental health professionals themselves. And so in this revelation, just working towards trying to change the way people view mental illness and creating a safe space for people to talk about it. And I really felt the more and more work I did in this area, I really started to focus more on youth. And that's really how we're going to create some change in terms of how we view and talk about mental health.
Is that, by the way, is that why you decided to go into this field, because of what had happened to you personally?
Yeah, I started doing a lot of suicide prevention advocacy outside of work and just found that I was spending more and more time in that space and how much satisfaction I was getting from it. The mental health community is very, very supportive. And I think a lot of people are brought to this by their own personal experiences. And so that just sort of propelled me to continue the work in this area and just do more, essentially.
That's actually how I started the show. You're probably thinking, what kind of show name is that? Get the Funk Out?
I love it.
I lost my friend at the end of 2010.
Wow.
And from what I gathered, what I was told, it was suicide. And I was a wreck. I mean, I can't say that I'm over it, because I don't think you really get over that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You move forward at your own pace, but it does change you. And sometimes you can make a shift in your life to use what you're going through to better yourself, to better other people.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And it provides, hopefully, people will talk about it, right? And not feel shame that a loss is a suicide. I think that's the whole issue. Is so many people are thinking about it, especially youth are thinking about suicide, and yet we haven't created this fully safe space to be able to actually have a conversation about it, which really keeps people from getting help.
Sure. Now, as I had mentioned before we started, here we are in a mental health pandemic. However, that was happening before COVID. Now it's more amped up. And from my experience as a parent and what I've read, what I've seen, talking to people on my show, we're so isolated. And students especially, they're doing remote learning. Perhaps they didn't have their graduation. They're starting their freshman year of college doing remote learning. It's not interactive enough. It's not engaging enough. They're missing out. I can go on and on with the list of things that can cause them to be so depressed. What are some things you're hearing about what's going on with teens?
We're definitely hearing about that, right? I think we're all realizing as a society how much we do need that in-person contact, and how that, maybe digital contact doesn't fully replicate that.
Yes.
So we're hearing a lot about that from youth. On our hotline, we're actually hearing about youth, just not being able to spend time with like grandparents and friends, especially.
Yes.
I was talking to a 15-year-old teen the other day, and he was saying, I know I have parents and I know I have a supportive group of friends, but I just want to hug a friend.
I know.
And it's things like that we forget the simplicity and the power in that.
Yes.
That we don't have right now, even though we're digitally connected. We're hearing a lot about, too, just a lot of those sort of life milestones. We heard a lot about how kids, aren't having graduations or having these sort of like virtual graduations. It really take away that sort of momentous occasion and celebration around that.
Yes.
Things like prom, and even hearing from youth that are going to a new school, and their first day's online. So it's so hard to connect, not knowing anyone and feeling like, you know, where do you fit, right?
Yes.
We forget about the social supports that come along and the socialization.
Yes.
Cool for kids.
I mean, you know, and I see like online learning where all the kids shut their cameras off and who knows what they're doing. And not to knock teachers, but I think teachers do have to amp up how they make it interactive, what they have them do. And I think personally, have them go outside. If they're in a astronomy class, have them go and look at the stars or do something outside, breathe the air. I mean, they can get out of the house, you know.
Well, and it puts a lot on parents too, to be sort of like the teacher's aide, right? To help facilitate some of these like experiments or activities, which is difficult, you know? I mean, people are playing multiple roles right now, and that can be really stressful.
It's so stressful. I mean, my heart goes out to teachers, to everyone. And as a parent, you know, I see my daughter going through so much because of this online learning her freshman year. And I think my advice would be to just make yourself available. They might not always want to talk to you. And that's where your teen line comes in. Because if you see them shutting down, you don't have to pull and pull and pull it out of them. Maybe they don't want to talk to you. But I would say give them the resources they need.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. Because, you know, I mean, a lot of times youth and teenagers for that matter, they still need their private time to reflect, right? And make sense of what they're feeling.
Yes.
And sometimes being able to talk to a peer can be that moment where they can do that.
Yes.
Better understand and process it.
So tell us more about the Teen Line. What happens?
Yeah, Teen Line is a Los Angeles-based nonprofit that is national, and we actually provide peer-based programs to help support youth mental health. So our primary service is our youth hotline, and essentially what that is it's a safe, non-judgmental space for youth to either call, text, or email the hotline and talk to a peer. So it's staffed by highly trained teens and supervised by mental health professionals who help give them emotional support and coaching. But really, I mean, we know just from research and anecdotally that when youth have a problem, they usually turn to a peer first or a friend first before they would an adult. Just because, I mean, the understanding, the relatability, and it just allows them to be sort of more open and honest about their problems. And that's what we see on our hotline. Kids open up. A lot of times we hear, you know, this is the first time I've ever told anybody this. And it allows them to have that space to really talk openly and authentically about what they're experiencing.
I think it's great that they can talk to other teens. When I read that, I thought, how unique.
Yes, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. I think, you know, even, and it's not that youth can't talk to an adult, right? But it's like they even do use different languages, you know, make different cultural references.
Yes.
That only a teen or a youth would understand. And so that trust is built. And so that really gets them feeling like they're in a safe space and gets them to open up.
Yeah. I mean, I know, you know, parents are under enormous amount of strain. And I've read things and I've heard things about parents just flipping a switch. You know, they're under struggles financially, everything. You know, they can't make their payments on their house. They've lost their job. I mean, we have over 40 million people without work. So there's a lot of strain, but then sometimes the kids are the ones that get all that thrown at them, and it's a lot. And so is your service anonymous? I mean, it's all anonymous.
It is anonymous. So they can reach out anonymously. I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, I think depending on how that youth is feeling about their issue. I mean, things that as an adult we would look at and say, oh, you know, you'll get through it, and oh, it's not that big of a deal. For them, I mean, you know, it's like that saying about like heartbreak. I mean, when kids are feeling heartbroken, they really feel like their heart is breaking, and we can't minimize those feelings, right? So being able to allow them to be able to open up anonymously about it really allows them to really talk extensively about what they're going through.
And I think they definitely need to work on resolving things. But the more they talk about something, as opposed to suppressing and then doing something else to push those feelings down, that's really unhealthy.
Yes. And you know, one of the things our teen, we like to call them listeners because they don't provide advice, but they actively listen, is they don't they don't tell the caller what to do. So what they do is they listen, they validate, they empathize, they really try to figure out what's going on. So kind of holding that person's hand through the process of talking about whatever their distress is.
Okay.
And then, hey, what can they do in their lives to help maybe manage some of the stress and anxiety around what they're experiencing?
It's good.
And then figure out, who in your life, so you're not having to call the hotline every night, who in your life can you talk to? Who do you feel comfortable with? And then we also leave them with support resources that they can access on their own. So that at the end of the call, text, or email, they're not feeling like, okay, they got this one moment of relief, but then they have nothing to use, no tools to use, right? To be able to handle some of it on their own.
Is there a time limit on how much time they can spend on the phone with the other teen?
No, it really depends on the severity of the call. I mean, we get calls and texts and emails about issues from like, I got in a fight with my parents, to someone who might be actively suicidal. So it just really depends. I mean, we try to give them the space to be able to really fully talk about what it is. So there aren't any limits in terms.
That's great.
Yeah.
Anything else? I know we're going to want to know the website. What is the website?
Yeah, the website's www.teenlineonline.org.
Okay.
And youth can actually call the hotline at 800-852-8336 anytime between the hours of 6 and 10, or text teen to 839-863.
Is that only during the week, or is that 7 days a week?
7 days a week.
6 to 10 at night?
Yes.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, when did this first start in LA?
It actually started in 1980 with our,
Really?
yeah, with our founder, Dr. Elaine Leader, who's a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And she had experience in running adolescent groups and also working on a pregnancy hotline. And she saw how the teens were interacting and providing so much support for one another. And she thought, maybe I can meld these two together. And that's sort of how Teen Line was born.
Very smart.
Yeah.
And now it's national.
It's actually international. So
international.
With emails, we get contacts from people all over the world, from Australia to India to China, all over.
And so you must be seeing an increase in calls right now.
We are, yeah. Volume has actually gone up since COVID hit, it's about 44%.
Wow.
And definitely seeing higher rates of reported, I think you mentioned loneliness is one thing we've heard a lot about. We've definitely heard a lot about anxiety, depression. Also suicide, unfortunately, is up, but it's good they're reaching out. But I think the most alarming is we've seen an increase of 140% in child abuse reports. Which is
horrific.
It is. I'm grateful that the youth are reaching out, but it just goes to show how difficult, and you were talking about it earlier, stressors within the family. I mean, there's so much going on right now. It makes it feel like a pressure cooker at times, I think, for families.
And I think people are so stressed, they're not dialing into having empathy for their kids. They're just bursting with so many emotions. And one thing I'll bring up is I'm a big proponent of self-care. So for any parents listening, like, you have got to take care of yourself. Do something as an outlet to deal with and manage the stress, because if you're good to you and you feel good, you'll be good to your people.
I think that's really well said, especially when you're playing so many roles and so much is being expected of you as a parent.
Yes.
I mean, even just to take out, a half an hour to an hour a day, just to have private time for yourself, giving you time to reflect, to take a breath, whatever that may be that you do, is extremely beneficial. It makes such a difference for your own mental health.
Yeah, because this is such a strange situation. And then I think about the kids. I did a talk a while ago, months ago, and I remember somebody saying, oh, my son won't leave the room. He doesn't exercise anymore. He's so depressed. And my heart went out to her, because I know, if they're in the house, no vitamin D, no exercise, no endorphins, nothing, they spiral.
Yeah, that's really true. That's really true. And I think it's important too, just like parents taking time out for themselves, to be able to give that to your kids. Because I think everybody's worried about their children right now, right? Like, how are they doing? Especially when you see stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, there's a point, obviously, it's always good to ask, right? And not make assumptions, just being very specific about, hey, I've really noticed that you're not getting out of bed in the morning, and you're not really talking to this friends anymore. I'm really concerned about you. What's going on?
Right.
That's always a good conversation to have, but also providing the space to let them reflect on their own feelings, right?
Yes.
So not being, families aren't used to being around each other 24/7.
You're not. So
just
there's a lot
letting
of
them have that private time to let
Yeah.
them just be a teen or a youth, right?
Yes.
To reflect on their own feelings.
Sure. And I've known families that their kids go to therapy and then they're thinking, well, they can't go face to face. So what are their options? But I've heard that colleges offer that. Like, let's say they pay a health fee, contact your local college or university and see what they offer, because it might be covered by that minimal health fee you're paying. You might be able to get Zoom calls with a psychiatrist, psychologist, whomever.
Yeah, that's very true. And a lot of organizations, even the county offers services if finances are an issue.
That's great.
That you can tap into. And there's a lot of organizations that are providing sort of online groups specific to whatever, is going on for you, which is great because it just provides an opportunity to be able to connect with others who might be going through something that you are too.
Yes.
Just makes you feel less alone.
Right. Any suggestions for teens that feel stuck in the house? Their parents want them to stay home a lot, but they want to go do COVID safe activities. Like I did kayaking with my daughter, or, I walk every morning. Any suggestions you have?
Yeah, I think sort of along the lines of what you've been doing. I think, find some things to do together, as a family, and allow them to be able to have maybe that social distance outside, space with a friend. Because I think it's so different. It's kind of that example of the 15-year-old boy, right? They're talking with their friends online or through social media, but just having that sort of face-to-face contact allows them to feel like they're in their own space, right? And having maybe those more private conversations and connections that they wouldn't be able to normally have online.
Yes. One other thing I realized too is if you have a son or daughter that was supposed to go off to college and they're living at home, they are so disappointed.
Yes.
I had a friend say to me, I chose mental health over COVID, and I sent my daughter back to college.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she'd be safe in her apartment, but I chose her mental health because she was so depressed. So try to be empathetic, knowing if they're stuck at home, they don't really want to be stuck at home. Would you want to be stuck at home at 18, 19? I don't think so.
It's so true. Yeah.
Right?
And I think just to take a breath and look at these situations with empathy. I think so often we're just plowing through to try to get things done, make sure they fulfill all the roles that are expected of us in this strange time, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with our own sort of unexpected emotions and difficult emotions, and just, taking a step back and taking a breath and
because as much as I heard, like at the beginning of this in March, people have said, oh, we're having game night every night, or like that gets old with teens, and they don't want to be hanging out with you all the time.
Sure.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's not a personal thing. They're trying to find themselves, right?
Yeah.
And part of that is interacting with their peers. That's how they figure out what they stand for, right? Their values and who they are as a person.
Yes.
So if they're not having those interactions, it makes it even more kind of distressing for them.
Definitely. Anything else you'd like us to know?
We have a multitude of resources on our website. Outside of our hotline, we have message boards for youth. So it's a community of over 30,000 youth worldwide who talk about, they're organized by specific issue. So they can have a supportive group of other teens from around the world to talk about certain things if they don't want to be calling the hotline all the time, or if that's not something they're comfortable with. We also have parent resources. We have a parent website that can be helpful. Especially we have COVID resources for parents of youth. And then also just some great educational brochures and youth yellow pages, which is resources specific to youth that are on our website. So
you want to throw out the website one more time?
Yeah, it's www.teenlineonline.org.
Okay, and you're on Instagram?
We're on all the platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. So you can find us.
What if a teen is listening or watching and they say, how do you become a volunteer and answer calls?
Yeah, so our volunteer opportunities are open 3 times a year. So we've actually taken our fall group, but our next group will be open in the spring. And I would recommend them going online to on our volunteer page and putting in your email. We'll let you know the details about it. But it involves 65 hours of training, which is pretty extensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of the youth that are getting involved in this aren't just looking for a resume builder, right? They're looking because either they might have been through their own challenges, they know somebody, a friend who struggled, and they really want to be able to give back to their peers in this way. The cool thing is not only are they helping other youth, right, and get that gratification and empowerment, but they have so much personal growth along the way.
I bet.
And a built-in support group of friends.
Yeah. Well, it kind of helps you work through your own stuff when you put that aside and you help somebody else.
Yeah, it's very empowering.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Michelle, this has been extraordinary. This was so timely, so I'm glad we could make this happen because I wanted to get this out in the world and share it with everybody because I know people are struggling.
Yes, and we really appreciate being on. And if anyone has any inquiries, feel free to go to our website and reach out to us. Really
and you had that great event last Saturday. It was like an all-day thing, or what was it?
Yeah, it was in honor of Suicide Prevention Week, which was last week. So the last day of Suicide Prevention Week, we had something called the Call-a-thon, and it's an annual event that we have at the Hotline. And we open the hotline from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to provide a full day of support. Because normally our hours are 6 to 10, as I mentioned, but our calls roll over to the Suicide Prevention Hotline when we're not open.
Oh, good.
So yes, absolutely. That's always covered.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for all you're doing. This is incredibly meaningful.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great to see you.
You too.